Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So life is going on. We remain the same, always, no matter what the circumstances. All right, someone turn on a microphone and try now. So you can notice, even with these kinds of interesting things happening, that you are here. These things are interesting in some ways. Of course, we have to solve the technological problems, but the most significant interest that they have from our perspective, if you will, is that we can use them to remind us that we are aware. It makes no difference what we are aware of. Mm, because we're always aware in the waking state, but we forget that, don't we? We get caught up in whatever the phenomenon or the objects are that are in awareness at a given moment. And we assign whatever is there some value. Oh, this is important. This is good. This is bad. This is a problem. This is not a problem. Always the mind is doing this. It's giving us some sense of its own importance by giving value to what we're experiencing and observing. But in truth, as many of you know, the value is in the awareness itself, not in what we are aware of in any given moment. When we come to this position, or we are in this position, then the objects, the phenomenon, the experiences, the emotions, the so on in life, in waking consciousness, are permitted to just come and go as they want to without our interference. What I mean by interference is without our establishing value in them, giving them value. You see, nothing in our awareness has value except we give it our attention and then the mind gives it some value. This is the nature of it, the nature of mind. But the nature of consciousness, the nature of awareness, the nature of love, of happiness, of joy, which is your nature, this has no value from the perspective of awareness or consciousness. You simply are this happy awareness, this love, and this joy. When you remove this capacity or ability or habit, conditioning of the mind to give value to whatever appears in awareness itself. So, in a way, I can say that as soon as you become disinterested in the sense of considering the value of something which is rising in your experience, as soon as you become disinterested in this, you can notice that awareness, that which you are, that awareness which is here now, present, as your recognition of whatever the phenomenon is, this awareness is always here and it remains pristine. It's not until the mind steps in and gives value to something that's going on in your experience, either good or bad, that you become entangled in whatever is coming, whatever is rising, whatever is falling. It doesn't necessarily mean that because you've become disinterested in the value of it, that you don't respond. Obviously, when we're having technological difficulties, it becomes incumbent on us to use the mind to fix the difficulty so that we can be together in this way. So we do this, but you can also notice in that moment that the awareness which is participating in this or illuminating this, actually, this activity, doesn't need to give it a value of positive or negative, just goes ahead and does it. And we just keep laughing and dancing and playing until we can get it to work. Awareness doesn't care whether you are enjoying yourself or not. This is mind that makes these value judgments. Once we realize this, then it becomes possible for us to just be in the dance of whatever is here, and just to keep playing, and not to take it too seriously, and certainly not to take it personally. But we still, because we are aware, we can still activate the mind and participate in whatever is happening, but with the recognition that we are already free, that we are prior to whatever the experience is. Of course, this is easier to do if it's funny, if it's happy, if there's some joy in it. Not as easy to do if there's pain, suffering, or struggling going on. But nonetheless, this is our constant practice with the inquiry, is to keep coming back to this recognition. I am aware. Asking this question, who am I? Recognizing I am that which is aware. And then allowing the activity of mind, the experiences going on in the world, all of that just to go on at its own pace, in its own way. And maintaining this kind of disinterested engagement with it. Then nothing becomes a hindrance or a blockage, if you will, to that recognition. I am that which is aware under all circumstances, under all conditions. I am that. When the inquiry itself is soundless or voiceless or without mind, then it can be easily seen that attention moves out into objects, does what it needs to do using mind, and then it settles back into itself as awareness. There's no interference, and in this case, there isn't even a need for the mental inquiry, who am I, or noticing I am aware. There is just this constant recognition that awareness itself responds to whatever circumstances are there. And when there is nothing here, when everything becomes silent, awareness settles into its own silence and remains as that. sometimes when we're not used to letting awareness settle into its own silence, it feels a little bit strange because our conditioning, our habit, is to always watch what the mind is doing. How is it relating to the body? What does it think of its own thoughts? What are its opinions about the world? This is why I said, at some point, you can and you must become disinterested in all of this activity. Once this disinterestedness begins to take hold, freeing life to just go on as it wants to go on, then your ability, if you will, this is not something you can really cultivate in some way. You already possess it, but as long as the mind is active, as long as there is an I, a you, a me, this is the foundation or the ground of inquiry. As long as the mind is still engaged in this kind of activity, this kind of judgment, opinion, uh, watching, witnessing everything that is going on in mind, body, and world, it becomes more and more difficult as you engage in that kind of activity for you to simply fall into your own being, that which you are in this moment, in every moment, but which you are sometimes unaware of. But as you increase your willingness, if you will, to embrace this disinterested witness quality, ability that you have, the easier it becomes for your innate freedom, your innate wisdom, your innate recognition, I am aware, to flower, to blossom, to expand. It is the very thoughts that you're having at any given moment and that you are following, encouraging, supporting. It is these very thoughts which prevent you from seeing that which is already here, that which you are, the freedom of your own being. Of course, you know thoughts come and go naturally. There's not an attempt made here to stop your thinking. Rather, there's a recognition that there is something before the thinking. So our intention is not to forcefully suppress thinking, but rather to inquire, who is thinking? As soon as we begin the inquiry, we ask the question, who is thinking? There's a recognition that happens immediately. I am. As soon as this recognition, I am, or I am thinking, comes, the object which was attracting us and drawing us out into the world, into the experience, withdraws from that experience and settles in the I experience. We know immediately in that moment, I am. Now the thinking has fallen away. So the I am thinking reply that comes to who is thinking turns into I am. As we settle, having let go of the experience or the thinking into I am, before long, the simple resonance is I, I, like a heartbeat. At this point, no mind is necessary. In fact, one can see in this moment that even to think is too much effort. Now it becomes possible to remain as you are, in the I am aware state, without the words, just aware, here, now. Everything from here on is wordless, conceptless. You are free. Do you see where I'm pointing? So, as you relax into this recognition, I am aware, and you are just here as this empty space. I can see a number of you are yawning and moving towards sleep. I know that those of you who this is happening to are on the other side of the world, and it's quite natural. This is your sleep time that you're here with. But do recognize that also, as you move more and more into this recognition, I am that which is aware, I am here now. There's also the natural letting go of tension in the body. And we can experience this as yawning and wanting to stretch and feeling like we should lie down. This is all part of it, all part of the natural recognition that I am here. Sleep, like everything else, coming and going. So it's not a problem. One of the tricks I have always used when I feel this kind of sleepiness coming on and I'm actually sitting somewhere or I'm doing the practice or I'm engaged in inquiry or have been in the past is to remind myself of this fact that as the body settles into what is, settles into here now, it naturally begins to release tension, stress from the day. And this is sometimes experienced as a sense of sleepiness or a sense of yawning and all the behaviors we associate with wanting to drift off into the oblivion of deep sleep. But I encourage you also, when you feel this coming on, not to give into it directly right away. Eventually, you cannot prevent it. You can sit up as straight as you want. You can tie your eyelids open in some way, and you will still fall asleep. And this is the nature of having a body. But when you are engaged in inquiry, if you feel this kind of this starts to happen to you, do remind yourself to take a deep breath, to bring some oxygen into the body, into the mind. You can keep your eyes open. Support yourself in continuing the inquiry, continuing the presence. I am here now. Realizing that the yawning and so on is just letting go of that tension in the body. If you don't assume, this is sleep coming and now I'm tired and I'm going to sleep, it's interesting. You can stay on the edge of that sword blade, if you will, between sleep and awake for quite a long time. This is a very rich place to be. It's just like that moment between dark and sunrise or sunset and dark. There's an energy, there's a presence, there's a silence, which is inherent in nature, which is most obvious at that moment when the sun is just rising or the sun is just setting. But because you feel yourself separate from the sun or from the time, you're able to just sit through that transition and you don't immediately fall asleep as soon as the sun goes down. It's the same with this feeling, I'm tired, I need to sleep. If you recognize it as that which is just the releasing of stress in the body and so on, the stress that's come from the day or whatever, if you recognize that, you can ride the edge of that space between waking and sleeping for quite some time. This is very valuable. The reason it's valuable is because the mind is in abeyance at that moment. When you're right on the edge between waking and sleeping, sleeping and waking, whether it's in the evening or in the morning, when you're right on that edge, the mind is subdued. It doesn't have the energy to go about its normal conditioned behavior. So this is a time for you as a sadhak, as a yogi, to really pay attention to the stillness of your own being. This is a moment when you are mind-free naturally. So no suppression, no repression is needed. So learn to recognize this moment and also to enjoy it. Enjoyment at this moment of feeling tired and the mind is subdued is very beneficial. You will know when it's time to just surrender, even in the middle of satsang, to falling asleep.